Far Sector, issue 8, N.K. Jameson, writing with Jamal Campbell on the art. And you know what? This is a really good book. I want to make this very clear. This is a very good book with wonderful art, and it's surprising.
You're about to lead into a but. I don't like this.
And no, it's a very enjoyable book, and it's impressive how much I enjoyed reading this issue. In spite of the complaint I'm going to make, which is the same complaint I've made the last 2 or 3 issues, is I cannot remember a thing that happened in the last issue.
Do you know what? I felt that at first, but as it went on, it was coming back to me. And even things that didn't come back to me just as I was reading it, there were things at the end of this issue that it would reference, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that was a thing," but it didn't. In some books that would detract from my experience because it would be triggering something. I'm like, yeah, that was vaguely a thing. But as soon as they kind of referenced an event, it came flooding back, which helped. I think it was, even though it was buried in my memories, once it was referenced, it came back in full rather than I had to actually reach for it.
Yeah, it was this thing where it took me a few pages to remember they were in a Matrix style place. Like I'd forgotten that completely. I
got that pretty quick. There was something near the start that made that clear for me.
There was a couple of pages.
I mean, it was because the first page is a recap, and then the second page, which is the start proper, the first panel is none of this is real, and there's an actual fight happening. I'm just in an interface overlaying, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, AI.
Yes.
It came back like that quickly for me, at least. When I was reading this, like literally, like okay, those 2 panels were enough for me.
No, I read that, but it took me another couple of pages to remember there was a whole story last issue about her going into the Matrix and how tough that was and how she's got this helper going with her and all. Like, I don't get me wrong. The first page has her in a Green Lantern power loader from Aliens. It's appealing to my sensibilities, right?
And a Leroy Jenkins.
Right? They know how to appeal to me. I don't give a shit about World of Warcraft, so piss off with that.
No, I don't care about that either, but I like because it pointed out later during this issue that Earth memes are currency for these people. And it's her helper from that people making that reference, so it made it even funnier in retrospect.
Yeah, okay, but I really, I mean, it justifies it in retrospect why this alien is saying this, because why else would she be saying it? It's weird.
No, exactly.
But no, like the power loader thing, fantastic. And yeah, once I sort of remembered we're in a Matrix style world, and I vaguely remember why they're here. It's one of those things where I vaguely remember a lot of the broad strokes. Like I remember obviously what she's investigating when she goes to the council later, and she's sort of like making her case. Like I remember obviously the one that she had the night of passion with, and I remember kind of the basic setup of things. But there's so many little things that they mentioned in this that I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about right now.
This is going to be a phenomenal trade.
It will be.
Just hand to anyone, right?
This is going to work so well. But there's points where they start talking about other suspects or something like that haven't been brought up in the issue before, right? And I'm like, clearly this is something from like 2 issues ago or something, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, it probably doesn't help. This is on a bi-monthly schedule, and then before, if it was the last issue or the one before, was before the shutdown. We've probably had only 3 or 4 issues this year.
Yes. This is the second issue after the shutdown, I think. Maybe the third, but definitely only the second. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, but
yes.
You phrased it weirdly.
Yes. So, this is the last 2-3 issues I've had this feeling, and it has been worse. Like when it was monthly, I wasn't doing too badly. It was fine.
I think the first couple, you were like, there's a lot to remember, but it did start going in after 2 or 3, right?
Don't get me wrong. It was tough because it's such a full mythology that the book introduces on its own, where we've got these different races, this planet, all these different rules, all new characters, all new backstories, all these society.
It felt in many regards like reading an Image or an indie book where you had to learn everything from scratch rather than knowing 80% of it just from DC knowledge.
And because of that, it wasn't like completely smooth, even monthly. It was that sort of thing. Well, this is really good, but it'll probably read even better than trade when I can take all this information in one sitting and not forget things. Since it started like being, the big break with the shutdown, and then every other month afterwards, like this has been such a I sat there and read it, and I was like, damn, what? I questioned, like, did I just wait for the trade on this now? Did I just like leave this behind? And the first page has the power loader. I'm like, oh no, this is so good. Like I want to read it.
And I don't know if those recap pages with the one with the power loader is going to be in the trade.
I think it will. That at least that one plays well enough. There's other comic books that have almost just as recappy first pages that aren't recap pages, so I think that will be there.
No, that's fair, but not necessarily. I mean, if they cut these, you could probably cut it pretty easily because 90% of this is, I'm the Green Lantern who's on this city, and there's all these people, and there's the emotional repression. That's what 90% of this page is.
Yes, and every single reprint of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern one still had him starting every issue with "I am the Green Lantern of Sector 2814." So don't even start.
No, it did.
It'll be there, and it'll be a problem. It'll be something to critique if it isn't. But I do think it's kind of a bad recap page, though, in that it didn't actually set up what the situation was right now, specifically, because it took me a couple of pages to remember the Run a Matrix style thing. Like, she could have just had a line saying, I had to follow someone into whatever this is called.
yeah. It mentions the assassinating the counselor, which and she's the one fixing the mess, but it doesn't mention the digital world, which is it comes in the next couple of panels for me. Took you a couple of pages, they said.
Yeah, it was just a gradual thing where because I read what she says about, this is not real, it's just like a thing, and I'm like, what, was that something to do with the planet? Like they all have like holograms over their faces or something? And then it's a couple of pages like, they're in like a Matrix thing, and then I looked at the other person, like, that's why she's dressed like Trinity. That was a whole reference last issue, and it kind of came back then. But I the last few issues of this I've read, I always have this feeling that I'm not getting everything, even when I'm understanding the gist of what's going on, I'm getting where it's going, and Joe's reactions to things I'm getting, but it always feels like there's these details that I just like. They're talking about things I just don't know what they're talking about.
I'm always afraid that that's going to happen when I sit down to read it, and I'm afraid, a couple of pages in, that I'm not getting it. But then every time I am, like for what however it does, I don't know, because I said there are comics I've dropped because of delays many a time, because I just the pacing kills it. I struggle to remember things, but for whatever reason, with this comic, maybe it's a testament to its writing as a whole, that when it references something, it triggers like a full flood of the exact details, rather than just, that vaguely happened, and then I have to work for the rest. It all comes back every single time, for me at least.
It's a bit dense. It kind of like, it's definitely science fiction, but the density of all the details is actually kind of viewing almost into fantasy levels, which is why I don't like fantasy sometimes.
I mean, maybe that's why my brain's potentially handling it a little bit better than yours, that I read a lot of fantasy. So, and sometimes in fantasy books, you'll go 3 years between, releases, and then have to snap back into a world, and it triggers your memories and of all the rules and such.
Yeah. So basically, they get the people they're after in the Matrix, and they're just hired guns. They're not the ones behind everything. They were hired to do the job, but they're not actually the head honcho or whoever it is that's behind it. And
they don't know who is. They don't learn.
Yeah, so Joe wants to find out, and her rings ran out of power, so she's actually sitting in her civvies for the rest of the issue. And
I like how they address it.
Sure.
Like someone's like, "Why are you in that?" And just to acknowledge that it is different.
And she's called into a meeting, where basically the head honchos, I think it's the plant eating one, you know what I mean, the one who's not the other two, the one who eats people. He gets really sort of offended and kind of like makes all sorts of accusations about Joe, and Joe is feeling unwelcome. Like, I came all the way to this planet from Earth. Like, either you want me or you don't. Like, I'll happily go. Like, if you don't want me here, I can leave. And the other guy sort of runs out and makes it very clear that that's not the case. Anyway, so this is the thing. The end of this issue, the dude's, whose name I don't remember, because I don't remember any character's names other than Joe. He gives her, I mean, I like their conversation, because she talks about how he's like different if he's on the drug or not, when he's got the feelings and when he doesn't.
He's insistent that he's not, that it's still always him, just sometimes he's as he puts it, more melodramatic.
Yeah. But he gives her a lead, like, go look at this, get CEPD involved, and come back and talk to me. And this is one of these things where I read this page setting up where she's going next, and I'm like, I am never going to remember this page when I read the next issue. I know I'm not going to remember like why she's doing what she's doing at the start of next issue.
I would like to think, for me at least, that like in this issue, it will come flooding back to me when something triggers it in the next issue. But who knows? We will wait and see.
I mean, the book flows really well. The art is gorgeous. I love the character of Jo. I like the way she interacts with all these other people in this world, and
we're what, 2/3 through this book now?
Yeah, all the other beings. I love so many things about this book. I think it's such an easy book to read, but I'm having this hurdle with every issue, the last like 2 or 3 issues, where I'm just like sitting struggling to remember what a lot of the things she's talking about or what everyone's talking about are. And I mean, yeah, exactly. You know, the I think what people would say to me is like, well, why don't you reread like the first like batch of issues? Not every before every issue, but like maybe to refresh the whole thing before the next one. I'm like, yeah, and if I had the time to do that, that'd be wonderful. But I don't. So
yeah, I mean, correct if I'm wrong. You don't read a lot of comics at the minute outside of what you have to because of time reasons, and not just because of the, you know, like this. You don't read a lot of anything else, really, do you?
Right now, I'm not doing much else now.
No, but that's what I mean, because you're busy. So you know, it's not like you're choosing to read other stuff instead of this.
No. So, you know, I mean, it's a good issue. It's a really good issue. I mean, I can't really even fault the issue for what I'm talking about, and this problem I have with it. It's the schedule I can fault. The issue itself, if I'm rating it, is probably a solid 8 or 8.5, but I didn't get the experience of an 8 or an 8.5 because I was sitting going, oh, what's this they're talking about? What's this? What's going on?
I get where you're coming from. I think I would give it an 8.5, and I will just say, I would take this being bi-monthly and keep Campbell on art every day of the week, as opposed to, oh, well, we can make it monthly, but you'll have some different artists.
I would never. I would never have proposed that. I would have said,
no, I know you wouldn't, but I know that, you know, that is often the solution for DC or Marvel, right?
Yeah, I would have said give him lead time and don't start releasing it until he's done over half the issues, so we could have it monthly.
that is the dream scenario, but I guess it's to do with how they have to pay out advances and they don't know how it's going to sell. But they that's why they don't do that on a regular basis. But no, that is the dream scenario. But you know, I would rather have it every other month and keep Campbell on art than force it out monthly and give us whoever. This is going to make for a phenomenal trade. I can guarantee, unless it shits the ending, of course. Which, I mean, it could do, but I mean, I have no reason to suspect it will.
Yeah, so he sends her off to look into FeelsNet. So we'll find out what that is next issue, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll settle on the 8. For the record, but that's
I am going to go with the 8.5.
As you struggle to live.
I'm doing my best.